By now, we think it's safe to say you know your favorite Marvel characters very well. But while we've seen them in various situations and outfits, many of us don't realize how close they came to looking completely different. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some fascinating concept art from some classic Marvel characters. We'll even reveal just how much more closely Gamora almost resembled her adopted father, Thanos. Thanos. It's kind of crazy to think that Thanos has been lurking around the MCU for such a long time. We got our first glimpse of the Mad Titan during the mid-credit scene of the Avengers, even though his existence has been teased long before then. It's been a long time since that movie was released in 2012, so we'll be reminding you that Thanos wasn't actually played by Josh Brolin then, but actor Damian Pache instead. And the Thanos we saw then was almost even more different than the Thanos we have now in the MCU. As far as Thanos himself goes, well, he was almost about 10% less chin, and his outfit was far sleeker and more streamlined than the armor we're used to seeing him in. Not only was Thanos much less bold looking, but so was the Infinity Gauntlet, which was silver instead of gold. While it's an interesting take, it looks less flashy than the final version, which looks more like what comic book fans are familiar with. And Thanos' darker outfit may have fit in better with a scene which ended up getting cut from Avengers Infinity War. When Thanos visits the Soul World following the decimation, the plan was to have him walk along a river of blood, but apparently Marvel Studios decided killing off half of all life in the universe was depressing enough. This actually could have paired with another part of rejected Thanos concept art, showing the Mad Titan with no shirt on. We're not saying we'd want to see a shirtless Thanos walking through a river of blood, but someone out there probably does. And hopefully we don't end up sitting next to them during Avengers Endgame. Ultron. Speaking of villains who went toe-to-toe with the Avengers, we have Ultron, who made his movie debut in Avengers Age of Ultron. And it's a pretty scary character, but he was almost all the more terrifying as this early concept art shows. We know our heroes are always having to fight bigger, badder villains, but this perhaps goes a little bit too far. The early idea was to have Ultron be a towering behemoth, similar in size to a skyscraper. It looks as though this massive mechanical menace is made up of many Ultron sentries, combined together into one nearly unstoppable monster. While this may have been awesome, there was some totally boring practical concerns which made it unfeasible. According to artist Phil Saunders, Mega Ultron was going to be made up of the drones Ultron deployed during the Battle of Sokovia. While it indeed looks awesome, it's not very tactically sound design. Plus, how would Ultron have been able to create so many drones? Phil admits to getting carried away with the idea, which is admittedly pretty awesome. But you know what they say, more robots, more problems. Pulling off Mega Ultron would have required the Avengers to be even more powerful and an equally powerful CGI budget. Cha-ching! Red Skull. Comic book fans know that Captain America was created to combat the very real threat of the Nazis. He started out battling the Marvel version of Adolf Hitler himself, but soon he had to branch out, meet new people, and punch them in the face. Enter Johann Schmidt, better known as the Red Skull, and Captain America's mortal enemy. He was introduced into the MCU during Captain America: The First Avenger, where he went from being a normal-looking human to having a face even Hitler couldn't love. But that distinctive Red Skull charm very nearly ended up looking very different on the big screen. According to artist Charlie Wen, he originally came up with a more dramatic design for the character. It's somewhat more dignified than the version we ended up with, and he looks like he shops at all the same clothing stores as Loki. Interestingly enough, it seems like Marvel Studios didn't dislike this aesthetic, even though they didn't end up using it. This version of Red Skull is very reminiscent of Ebony Maw from Thanos' Black Order. However, artist Ian Joyner wanted to go in a different direction with the Red Skull and make him all the more terrifying looking. In the end, this version is way too scary, and the other far too posh, so we ended up with a Red Skull somewhere in the middle. Loki. Loki has a long but not particularly successful career in the MCU. He's an immediately recognizable character, and it's hard to imagine anyone but Tom Hiddleston portraying him. Artist Charlie Wen claims earlier versions of Loki concentrated on his manipulative nature, rather than his relationship with Thor. As a result, Charlie designed a character who looked, well, less mentally stable than the one we ended up with. Charlie calls this version Wacky Loki, and we can't say we disagree with that assessment. Loki has been around for quite some time, so he has even more rejected wardrobe concepts. In Thor Ragnarok, Loki was, in many ways, redeemed for his previous crimes, and the new Loki very nearly got a new outfit, far more grandiose and colorful than the ones we've seen him wearing before. Gamora. By the time Guardians of the Galaxy was released, everyone knew that starring in a Marvel movie is a huge career boost. We love seeing well-known comic book characters on the big screen, but there's something to be said for working with less well-known characters. Because most fans don't have preconceived notions about them, artists have more freedom. As a result, the artist went a bit wild with creating potential versions of Gamora, including one where she's purple and bald, just like Thanos. At least that would have explained why she was his favorite. Gamora had many different looks in the comic books, so Marvel Studios had many options to choose from when it came to adapting her character for the film. Rocket. Everyone knows that the sarcastic yet brilliant Rocket Raccoon looks like, a raccoon. It's in his name, but did you know that his character was modeled after an adorable real-life raccoon named Oreo? Tragically, Oreo passed away in February 2019 at the ripe old age of 10, but her likeness lives on, and so does her work as an ambassador for her species. That's a cute trash panda. However, Rocket came very close to not being so cute when he debuted in Guardians of the Galaxy. He has a big personality packed into a rather petite character, and originally, he was less adorable and quite a bit creepier. The original Rocket was kind of off-putting, and even smoked a cigar, which was something Disney definitely wouldn't have approved of. Artist Justin Sweet created a different version of Rocket, which showed him looking less like an actual raccoon, and more like a person in a bad raccoon costume. Or maybe it was an older version of Rocket after he's seen some heavy stuff and let himself go a little bit. This version doesn't look much like the comic book version or the big screen version of our favorite talking raccoon. Vision. Everyone knows that Robert Downey Jr. was having serious career issues before he was cast as Tony Stark in Iron Man, but fewer people are aware that actor Paul Bettany was also in dire straits before he was welcomed into the Marvel Cinematic Universe family. He claims a producer, who shall remain nameless, completely tore him down about his acting ability. He screamed that Paul was completely finished in Hollywood and that nobody would hire him ever again. Yikes. But Paul Bettany didn't have too long to feel sorry for himself before his phone suddenly rang with an offer for the role of Vision in Avengers Age of Ultron. Although it might have been hard to recognize Paul Bettany underneath all of his makeup and costuming, it's safe to say he's one of the most iconic-looking Marvel characters. He's an excellent mix of robot and human, but he was originally going to more closely resemble a mechanical creature than a man. Artists played with different color palettes before settling on one, and Vision very nearly ended up looking like a member of the Sovereign. Of course, there's also some concept art of Vision looking less friendly and more intensely creepy. Captain America. At this point, it's hard to imagine anyone other than Chris Evans playing the role of Steve Rogers. But before he was cast, Marvel Studios conducted an extremely extensive casting search, which attracted some talented big-name actors. One of them was John Krasinski, best known for his work on the sitcom The Office. He auditioned for the role of Captain America and was feeling good about his chances until he ran into Chris Hemsworth dressed as Thor. Apparently, seeing the God of Thunder brought John back to Earth, and he realized maybe this wasn't the role for him after all. As far as Captain America's costume goes, that one is pretty iconic. However, one of the earlier designs featured a big blue coat and ends up looking like the part in the first Avenger when Cap disguises himself as a soldier. Marvel Studios decided this didn't make him look enough like an actual soldier, which was an extremely important part of his character. Thor. We know Chris Hemsworth intimidated Captain America hopeful John Krasinski, but he wasn't guaranteed a part either. There were some other actors considered to play the God of Thunder, including Alexander Skarsgård, who apparently really wanted the part, and surprisingly enough, Tom Hiddleston, who was also a strong contender for Thor, and even started undergoing strength training to get in shape for the role. However, Marvel Studios decided he was better as a villain and gave him the role of Loki. We can only imagine losing the part of Thor helped him get into his new character considering their on-screen relationship. There was also the idea of introducing Balder the Brave, the brother of Odin, into the MCU, but this never ended up happening. Black Widow. Costume changes are part of being a hero, and Black Widow has had no shortage of aesthetic alterations during her time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Her ever-changing hair is often used as a plot device in order to mark the passage of time, which can get tricky when you're dealing with movies like Avengers Endgame. The role of Natasha Romanoff is played by Scarlett Johansson, but Emily Blunt once earned the role. She was the original choice to portray Black Widow, but ended up having to drop out because of a scheduling conflict. Of course, Emily Blunt is the wife of John Krasinski, so the MCU almost had a very different look. Other actresses also auditioned for the role, including Jessica Biel, Gemma Arterton, Natalie Portman, Jessica Alba, and Angelina Jolie. After winning the role, Scarlett Johansson had to wear a costume, which was a huge departure from its original design. Initially, this incredible assassin was going to wear a costume that surprisingly looked more practical than sexy. It made her look like the soldier she was, but of course, it ended up getting ditched for something that showed a little bit more cleavage. What do you think about the way these characters very nearly looked? Do you prefer the final versions of the concept art? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.